Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something foundational. We're looking at the invisible infrastructure of every company. Trust.
And more specifically, the giant hole that seems to have opened up in it.
Exactly. Our mission for this deep dive is to get to the bottom of this, what we're calling the 2025 workplace trust deficit. We want to know why skepticism is now the default mindset for so many employees.
And crucially, what organizations can actually do about it. Because trust, it's always been called the invisible architecture in research. It's what lets people collaborate, take risks.
But the sources we're looking at, mainly Live Career's big trust deficit report, plus some key academic papers, they show that architecture is, it's crumbling.
The numbers really paint a picture of a system that's broken at multiple points.
Let's just get them out there because they are pretty shocking.
Mm-hmm.
First up, 45% of HR professionals admit they post ghost jobs.
So positions with no real intention of being filled.
None. It's deception, baked right into the very first step.
And it gets worse once you're inside. 79% of employees said they would avoid 360-degree reviews if they could.
They see them as harmful. And what about just the day-to-day environment? 58% of people see workplace gossip every single week.
Every week. And that all leads to the big one, the bottom line.
40%. 40% of workers have quit a job specifically because they didn't trust their manager.
That is an incredible number. It's not about pay, it's not about perks, it's about trust.
So before we dig into how we got here, maybe we should quickly define what we mean by organizational trust. It's a specific concept, right?
It is. Formally, it's the willingness to be vulnerable to the organization's actions. But the easy way to think about it is through three essential dimensions that researchers laid out years ago.
Okay, what are the three non-negotiables?
First is ability. Is the person or the system actually competent enough to do what they promise?
Can they do the job? Got it.
Second is benevolence. Do they genuinely care about your welfare, or is it all about their own motives?
So, do you have my back?
Exactly. And the third is integrity. It's the big one. Is there consistency between what they say and what they do? When those three things, ability, benevolence, and integrity, start to fail, you get the crisis we're seeing now.
Okay, so let's get into the cause. This isn't just one bad policy. Our sources point to accumulated failures across four key areas. Let's call them the four pillars of credibility collapse.
And that first pillar, as we said, hits you right at the front door. The hiring credibility crisis.
The ghost jobs.
Yeah.
That 45% number is it's stunning. I mean, what's the justification? Building a pipeline.
That's the common one, or market sensing. But from the applicant's side, it's a complete violation of what we call informational justice.
Informational justice. What does that mean in this context?
It means people rely on honest and adequate explanations during a hiring process. When you post a fake job or you just go completely silent on an applicant, that silence is a breach of trust. It poisons the well before they even start.
You're setting an expectation and then just dropping it. It shows the system itself lacks integrity.
Absolutely. So moving on to the second failure point. This is about the systems that are meant to help us grow. Performance reviews.
Right. We're seeing a total delegitimization of the performance system.
We really are. That's 79% who'd opt out of 360s, and 74% said they'd receive feedback that was just unfair, biased, or plain wrong.
And this is where it gets really toxic. Almost half saw the process as just fuel for office politics. And nearly 80% suspected that their colleagues were using it to settle old scores.
It's being weaponized.
Yeah. It's an internal battleground, not a development tool.
And this is a classic violation of what's called procedural justice. A fair process has to be consistent, it has to suppress bias, and critically, it needs to have a way to be corrected.
Okay, what does effective correctability even look like? Because in most bad systems, it's just you telling your manager you disagree and them nodding and filing it away anyway.
A fair system has a real appeal mechanism, a formal process where an employee can say, this feedback violates our standards, and have it reviewed by someone neutral. Without that, the whole thing feels like a sham.
Which brings us to failure point number 3, the one that shapes every single day. Peer relationship deterioration, the gossip epidemic.
58% witnessing it weekly. That is the sound of psychological safety dying.
And psychological safety, that's the ability to be candid, to admit mistakes, to innovate.
Without fear of punishment. And gossip just rushes in to fill the vacuum when leaders don't communicate properly.
How does that vacuum form, though? Is it just leaders not talking enough?
It's often about what they don't talk about. If management only shares the wins and hides the problems, or if there's no predictable way to hear bad news, people just make up their own stories. Gossip becomes the main channel for information.
And the most chilling stat here, for me, is that nearly half of employees trust no one at work with confidential information. Not a single person.
You can't solve hard problems in that environment. You can't innovate. Which leads us to the final and maybe most important failure: leadership credibility collapse.
The 40% who resigned over a manager, and over half said they've been lied to by a manager.
And you might ask if it's fair to blame just the manager and not the wider culture.
Yeah, that was my question. Doesn't the organization enable that bad behavior?
It absolutely creates the environment, but the manager is the delivery mechanism. All the big research studies show that your trust in your direct supervisor is a much stronger predictor of your performance and whether you'll quit than your trust in senior leadership.
So when you're deciding to stay or go, your boss matters more than the CEO.
By a long shot, they're the organization in your daily life. If they fail on ability, benevolence, or integrity, you leave.
So given that whole catalog of failures, what's the actual cost? Let's shift to the consequences, because this proves trust isn't some soft metric. It's a real hard cost to the business.
And you start with turnover. That 40% resignation rate from managerial distrust, that's a direct, massive expense. Replacing an employee costs, what, 50 to 150% of their salary.
At least. For some roles, it's way more.
So even for a medium-sized company, that's millions of dollars a year walking out the door because of trust issues.
And beyond the direct cost, think about the drag on everyone who stays.
Exactly. When 79% of people don't believe in the feedback system and half don't trust their colleagues, what happens to collaboration?
It just stops.
It grinds to a halt. People start diverting their brain power to self-protection, to navigating politics. They're constantly looking over their shoulder instead of doing their job.
And that fear, that's what kills innovation, right?
It absolutely suffocates it. If admitting a mistake or asking a dumb question or proposing a risky idea gets you punished in a 360 review or spread through the gossip mill, you just stop doing it. You play it safe. The whole organization loses its ability to adapt.
And these costs aren't just organizational. There are huge individual and even societal impacts.
The individual cost is immense. Working in these low-trust places creates chronic stress. There's research linking unfair systems directly to health complaints, to cardiovascular issues. It literally makes people sick.
And what about those ghost jobs? That's not just wasted time for one person.
No, it's a huge societal cost. Millions of collective hours are wasted applying for jobs that don't exist. It completely distorts what we think the labor market looks like and hurts people's ability to plan their careers.
Okay, so this all sounds pretty bleak. The good news, though, is that if these are systemic problems, they have systemic solutions.
They do. But the key is that the fixes have to be structural. You can't just put trust on a PowerPoint slide. The solutions need to be wired into the company's actual processes.
So let's start at the beginning again. Hiring. How do you rebuild trust and fix the ghost job problem?
You need discipline and honesty. A commitment to universal communication. No more silence. You have to honestly classify jobs. Is this an immediate hire or are you pipeline building? And you change the metrics for recruiters to include candidate experience, not just how fast they fill a role.
The source material had a great example, a hospitality company that started giving guaranteed response times and specific respectful rejection letters.
And their candidate satisfaction shot up. It's simple integrity.
Okay, so next up, fixing the broken performance systems. How do we disarm those weaponized 360s?
Two big structural changes. First, rater accountability. You have to require specific behavioral examples for every rating. You can't just say, poor communicator. You have to cite 3 examples of it happening.
That forces it to be objective, not just, I don't like this person. What's the second change?
You have to, and this is critical, you have to separate developmental feedback from evaluative pay and promotion feedback. The 360 should be anonymous and for growth only. The manager's assessment is for evaluation.
So one is for getting better, the other is for getting paid.
Exactly. And that brings us to leadership. Rebuilding trust in managers.
This feels like the most important intervention.
It is. The key is training managers in 2 disciplines. First is promise-making discipline. Make fewer promises, but keep every single one of them. It's better to under-promise and over-deliver.
Pure integrity. But how do you train for benevolence? How do you teach someone to show they care without it feeling fake?
Through what we call benevolent signaling. It means when a manager makes a decision, they have to explicitly talk about how they considered the impact on employee well-being.
So instead of just we're working this weekend.
I know this impacts your family time, here's why it's critical, and here's how we're going to try and make up for it. It shows you actually saw them as a human being.
And finally, stopping the gossip. How do you fix that communication vacuum?
You build a structured communication infrastructure, predictable updates, regular town halls, and, this is key, an anonymous way to ask questions that get answered publicly. You take away the need for people to invent their own answers.
But what about the gossip itself? The bad behavior?
That requires direct intervention. Leaders have to be trained to visibly redirect it. The simple but powerful question is, have you talked to that person directly about this?
That just stops it in its tracks.
It puts the accountability right back where it belongs.
So all of these are fixes. But let's look ahead. How do you build an organization that's resilient to this stuff in the long term?
It starts with understanding the psychological contract.
Explain that. What is it?
It's the unwritten set of beliefs about what you and your employer owe each other. If you believe the job promises fast promotions, but the company sees it as a static role, that's a ticking time bomb. When that contract gets broken, trust collapses.
So how do you manage an unwritten contract?
You make it more explicit. You practice what's called realistic organizational self-presentation. Be honest in hiring about the good and the bad. And then you have ongoing conversations to renegotiate that contract as roles change.
Okay, so be realistic. What else builds resilience?
Distributing accountability. Trust can't just be HR's job. You have to hire and promote managers based on their trustworthiness, their demonstrated ability, benevolence, and integrity, and teams need to hold each other accountable for psychological safety.
And the final piece has to be measurement. If you don't measure it, it's not a priority.
You have to treat trust like a vital sign. Regular surveys, sure, but you also have to look at behaviors. Are your best people leaving? Are people using the appeal systems? And you have to be transparent with the results and what you're doing about them.
That really seems to be the common thread, doesn't it? Consistency and transparency. The evidence is clear that rebuilding this is a slow process built on real structural changes, not slogans.
And it pays off. The research is very clear on this. Trustworthy organizations just perform better retention, better satisfaction, better bottom line. It simply pays to be trustworthy.
So, to wrap this up, what should you be thinking about? We've laid out how trust is the essential infrastructure for work. So here's the provocative thought. If almost half of all employees feel they can't trust a single colleague with confidential information, how much potential is being left on the table? How does that lack of safety fundamentally limit what an organization can actually achieve? Forget fixing the whole company. Just watch your own manager this week. Do their words match their actions? That's where it all begins.
Thanks for diving deep with us.